right, welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us. If you need clarification, you are in this breakout session about financial prowess. All of us want a little more of that. So tonight's event includes some information that we've been hearing from parents and students that they need more information around, and that is financing education beyond high school and being a financially literate young person. So we have 3 guests tonight who are here to talk us through that basic information, and they also will have a table in the main comments for you to chat with them afterward if you're interested. So tonight I'd like to welcome from Mount Mary University Financial Aid Office, Angela Sarney. From UW Parkside Financial Aid Office, Blake Taylor. And from Savaglia Investment and Planning, Tim Windler.
Yeah, I'm going to start. Yeah. All right. Well, great. Thanks for everyone attending tonight. I'm sure there's lots of other things that one can be doing, but this is a very important and critical thing for all of your families to learn. And obviously, with the theme of opportunities, resources, and experiences, I think Franklin has put on a great program. What we want to talk about is obviously about financial aid. Angela and I will talk about that. We'd like to hold the questions for you to come by our table and ask those questions individually. What we want to do is jump right in educating you about the financial aid process. Whether you already have a son or daughter in post-secondary education, or this is your first son or daughter going into it, there's a whole language that you need to learn or be aware about in terms of terms and processes and things of that nature. The first is to start about what is financial aid. Financial aid are funds to help supplement your family's ability to pay for college, right? And the hope that the financial aid award given to any post-secondary school will be sufficient to cover those costs and needs. What type of resources are you looking to get? They are broken down basically into 2 categories. Gift assistance, which would be scholarships and grants. Resources that are not having to be repaid, right? Free money, essentially. And we certainly hope all of the families here have opportunity to get access to that, either through completing the FAFSA or doing scholarship searches and various other means to access that through the institution resources as well. Self-help aid are things like federal loans, employment such as work-study aid and things of that nature. Those are the basic types of aid that you'll find in a financial aid award at a school or university. The sources of the financial aid come from the federal government in terms of federal loans, loans called subsidized and unsubsidized that will be borrowed by the student, potentially a Parent Plus loan that will be borrowed by the parent. State and government programs, there are various different grants that will be given that are federal grants as well as state grants. If you're a Wisconsin resident, you could get a Wisconsin grant. If your FAFSA information has a expected family contribution number or an EFC number that's low enough, then students are eligible for what's called a Pell Grant, one of the larger types of grants and resources that can be very helpful in paying for that college education. What institutional programs can be provided, whether they be Mount Mary, Parkside, or any other university? Those institutional resources and endowments will vary and may separate. And you shouldn't be scared to look at a private university versus a public university, right? The idea is that certainly private universities have a higher cost, but the institutional resources that come from that university may drastically impact that cost with endowments and scholarships and grants and things of that nature that make that affordable. And the idea of figuring out what that financial aid award looks like compared to one university to another university's resources is an important determination decision that needs to be made. Community programs, things that, again, you're maybe applying for scholarships that you might connect yourself with, apply for and receive maybe a scholarship from a local, 4-H club or whatever scholarship that might be out there that comes from a community-based relationship that you have applied for. National programs, again, have to do with different scholarships along those lines. There's several different websites listed in the pamphlet here. These are all valid and legitimate websites. You should never have to pay to do your financial aid, right? Your free application for federal student aid is what the acronym stands for. Nor should you ever have to pay for a scholarship. These are websites that are legitimate for the purposes of ascertaining and obtaining financial aid. All colleges and universities have these websites. The high schools have tuned into these and have them on their websites as well, so they are legitimate. With respect to applying, this is the federal website. You go to FAFSA.gov. This is what you'll be looking at, is a screenshot of what that application process begins to look at. It's important that you should know that there are 2 current aid years that are out there. Okay, make sure that you're applying for the appropriate aid year for next fall, which is 2018-2019. Because the current aid year for students that are currently enrolled, it's out there as well. We don't want you misapplying for the wrong aid year. So just make sure you don't fall into that wrong step. Okay? And again, everyone should be applying. And I hear a lot of times from families, oh, I make too much money, I'm not eligible for anything. Well, I certainly encourage every family should apply because every student is eligible for something. It may only be federal loans, but certainly if your family has means to pay for college education on your own, that's well and great. However, it's always good to have a backup plan in case some type of financial emergency comes along that might take your son or daughter's resources towards that education away, so that you can at least fall back on a loan, for example, to pay for that education, should that monetary crisis come along. So every household should be applying for financial aid, because every household has access to some sort of resource. With respect to eligibility for financial aid, there's going to be a lot of questions that are going to be asked on the FAFSA. There's certainly guide tools. The FAFSA website is very user-friendly. As you move the mouse over to the question, there'll be pop-up windows. There's toll-free numbers to call to get assistance. As far as all the data that's collected, it'll help us tell you what your son or daughter is eligible for from a federal standpoint in terms of those federal grants, state grants, federal loans, and such to help you pay for college. With respect to applying for financial aid, obviously there are a few steps in that process. You go to the FAFSA website. One of the things that we'll talk about is that both a responsible parent and the student will need to sign up for what's known as a Federal Student Aid ID or FSA ID. In our business, we work with a lot of acronyms, so I'll try and define those in their fullest definitions. So an FSA ID, or a Federal Student ID, is basically your electronic password, right? It's a username and a password. That's your electronic signature to sign off on that form. That's a critical piece of information for you to retain, okay? Because now they'll be using it in the every year, the next 4 years potentially. We don't want you missing out on the opportunity to file, having to go through the process of resetting it and things of that nature. So make sure when you establish that, you write that in your little black book and you keep that handy, create a file folder at home for these kinds of important things because you'll be digging it out every year, okay? It should be known that you can start applying for 18-19 now, okay? The starting deadline to apply actually occurred back on October 1st. During the Obama administration, there was legislation which passed and reset this date, which has now made it easier for families to apply, get financial aid information from the schools ahead of time, so they can make budgetary decisions and important decisions about where to go to school and what's affordable, okay? With respect to the tax information, through the FAFSA, you're able to use something called an IRS data retrieval tool, which is a mechanism which will allow you to download your tax database information from the IRS right into the FAFSA. And I highly encourage you to use that mechanism when you complete your FAFSA for a number of different reasons, just for the convenience of putting in accurate information so that you don't miskey anything that's being requested. And for the 18-19, you're using your 2016 taxes, which should already be completed, right? So there shouldn't be any difficulties with getting that data into the FAFSA and delaying your financial aid award. With respect to identifying maybe what likely you might receive as a financial aid award at various different institutions, every university has something called a net price calculator. You can use this website, FAFSA Forecaster, to help identify what you might likely get on a typical award based on some critical pieces of information filled in. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a preview of what type of financial aid award that a son or daughter might get based on the household situation without having to file a FAFSA. So, one of the questions as parents might have is, you might consider your son or daughter independent, but dependency or independency is a terminology that the Department of Ed defines based on certain questions that are asked on the FAFSA, and this will be completed first by the student to know whether or not parent information is necessary. So, most high school graduates are going to be considered a dependent student because the questions of, are you 24, are you a graduate, are you a veteran student, are you married, Do you have a dependent that you're financially responsible? Or some homeless status questions. For most high school graduates, you're not necessarily going to answer yes to those questions. So if you're answering no, you're going to be considered dependent until one of those factors changes, right? So that's no reason to get married or have a kid, right, ladies and gentlemen? All right, good. The left. So obviously the need for parents to be involved. I should note that students should be the driver of this. I know we have a lot of parents who might want to make sure that their sons and daughters do these things right, but it's very important that both the student and the parents communicate. Again, building that relationship. You both have a part and a role to play in this, both for different purposes, but there should not be all the students' responsibility, there should not be all the parents' responsibility in doing these things. And I've seen that when families work together in open communication about these things, their processes run a lot more simpler. So just a word of advice on that point. That was a lot of information we want to get to you. So if you have questions at the end, please come visit Angela and myself at our tables. What I'd like to do is turn the tables over to Angela to speak about some other important factors having to do with financial aid, receiving an award letter, and things of that nature. So I thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Blake. So how many of you guys have heard of the FAFSA form before tonight? Yeah, that's half the battles right there. So the FAFSA form is really important, so we are going to touch a little bit more just on the FAFSA form. So the FAFSA form itself, there's a parent portion of the form and there's a student portion of the form. Things that you want to kind of have ready on hand with you when you go to complete the form are parent and student social security numbers, the student's driver's license. Students, if you do not have a driver's license, you're still eligible for financial aid, but if you do have one, please make sure you record it on your application. Student and parent tax returns and W-2s. Blake mentioned earlier that we're using prior years, so 2016 tax information, for example, for our students filling out their application for the 2018-2019 school year. So have that. And then the student and parent current bank statements. One thing that's a little bit confusing with the form is that we are looking at multiple different time frames. So with your tax information, we're looking from 2 years back. For your bank statements, we're looking as of the day that you fill out the FAFSA form itself. So you want to make sure you're paying attention to the time frame. Along with current bank statements and investments for both the student and a parent, including business, farm records, stocks, bonds, anything like that. One question that is on the FAFSA form that I do want to touch on a little bit tonight, because it does tend to be the one that throws off most families, is the asset question. So this question will be on for the student and for the parent. What the assets are going to be are basically your stocks, your bonds, your UGMAs, your 529 plans, your real estate investments. When it comes to answering this question, the FAFSA form online has a great resource. They have the help feature. It's on the right-hand side of the screen. If you have an account and you're not sure if it should be added to the assets or not, make sure you utilize the help feature, because a lot of times families include assets or what they consider to be assets that are not actual assets. So value of your home, cars, motorcycles, boats, anything like that. The value of the home that you live in is not considered an asset. If you have a second home or rental property, something like that, that's considered an asset, but not the value of the home that you live in. And then the value of your 401ks or your retirement funds are not considered an asset too. So again, make sure you're utilizing that help feature a lot. So Blake mentioned this earlier, the FSA ID. This is what you're going to use to actually sign the FAFSA form electronically. Both the student and one parent needs it. This is yours for your lifetime that you're borrowing or actually going through the financial aid process. So parents, if you currently have another student that you already have an FSA ID for, that you already completed the FAFSA form with, it's your same FSA ID. There's no need to get a new one. Students, you can actually go ahead and get a new one now and start the process. One disclaimer with this, whatever email address you use to set up the FSA ID, make sure you're going to have access to that email address over the next 10, 15 years. One thing that I'm seeing a lot of is students are using their high school email address, which is great, but unfortunately sometimes when you graduate high school, you don't have access to that email anymore. So make sure you set up like a Gmail or a Yahoo, something like that, so you have access to this FSA ID throughout your time. So frequent errors, student and parent social security numbers. One thing that I do see a lot too is not using your real name. So if your name on your social security card is Jonathan, you cannot fill out your FAFSA form as Johnny. It has to be your legal name. Divorced and remarried parents, this is a very common situation. So if you have a situation and you're not sure if mom and dad or biological mom and biological dad should be on the FAFSA form, come see Blake and I afterwards and we can come to help walk you through that process. Income taxes earned and income taxes paid, those questions are going to be utilized with that IRS data retrieval. So if you do that IRS data retrieval, which is where the IRS puts in that information for you, that problem is alleviated greatly, which is awesome. So now that we know what the FAFSA form is, we kind of want to talk a little bit what happens afterwards. So when you fill out your FAFSA form, you're actually going to send it to the Department of Education. The Department of Education is going to send that information to the schools that you're interested in. The department, or what the schools are going to do, is put together your financial aid award letter, also referred to as your financial aid package. The terms are kind of interchangeable. You will receive a financial aid award letter to every university that you're accepted to, and that you submit your FAFSA form to. So there's a couple things that we want to talk about. For every school that you receive your award offer to, you want to ask a couple questions. You want to ask, is that award offer going to stay the same throughout my 4 or 5 years for the program? If my award offer stays the same, will tuition go up or will tuition stay the same? Because if your tuition increases, hopefully your award offer will increase, but it may or may not. So you want to have those conversations. And then also you want to talk about with the schools about what changes could happen or could impact that award offer. So say you receive an outside scholarship check for $500. Is that $500 going to get added to your current award offer? Or potentially in some cases, and this is very rare, the school might pull off $500 of their funding because you now have $500 in outside scholarships. Again, it's not something that's common, but just make sure you're asking your universities those 3 questions when you get your award offers. And then avoid scams, again, Blake mentioned this earlier, but you always never want to make sure that you pay for anything. So do not pay to fill out the FAFSA form, do not pay for scholarships. Make sure you're avoiding any scams like outside scholarships that are requesting like your social security number or full date of birth, anything like that, probably a no-go. And then another thing too is financial aid offices, we're very aware that things change. So you're filling out your FAFSA form, you're using tax information from 2 years ago. And you're filling out the FAFSA form almost a full year in advance that you're actually attending that university. So anything that changes to the financial strength of the family, whether it be within the first year of education or all the way up to your senior year, talk to the financial aid office. Examples are if medical bills are not being covered by insurance, maybe mom and dad lose employment, something like that. Something that's impacting the financial strength of the family, come talk to the financial aid office. We can't guarantee that additional information will be made available or different additional resources, but we want to have that conversation. We want to make sure that you're eligible for every dollar and that we've awarded you every single dollar that we can. So way too much financial information, but we're going to keep it going. So we talked about the FAFSA form, we talked about the questions that you're going to ask the university. Now we're going to talk about budgeting and credit card debt and all that fun stuff, right, Tim? Awesome. All right, so I'm going to bring on Tim right now, too.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Windler. I am a financial advisor with Savali Investments and Planning. We're an independent firm located here in Oak Creek. And so when I was initially contacted to speak this evening, it was more under the premise of kind of talking to the students and their role as they become younger adults. So that's kind of where we're coming from as far as financial literacy, financial prowess as it's themed tonight. So I'll give you some backstory on myself, or our firm to start with. We've been in business since '99. We're a local and independent firm. Mostly our emphasis is on retirement or financial planning. We do some other things as well. I grew up on this side of town. I grew up in South Milwaukee, joined the team where I work now in 2015. My wife, Caitlin, is the finance manager of our Greendale School District. I'm on the board of directors here for the Chamber of Commerce, and that's sort of where my relationship began with Franklin High, in particular with their launch program. So Nick and Rachel, Nick Cohen and Rachel Frederick came and spoke to me about being a mentor, and that's how my relationship began with the district here. So now I'm not a total stranger to you, so we're going to talk a little bit about some things that are important for kids right now to understand as they transition into being young adults. All right, so I remember my first years off at Whitewater, I got a ton of mail about credit cards, and I had never had a credit card before. Some high schoolers nowadays have one, some have just a debit card. Everyone's situation is different. But at the time, I had no idea what credit really meant when I was an 18-year-old student. Not a lot of my friends did either. And so I asked the question to my parents, what is credit? What does that mean? All right, and one of the quotes that's kind of been told to me over the years is saving is important and credit is crucial, especially as you become adult age and you're looking to do things. So your credit score is always going to be your thermometer. That's what a lender, so any student who's going to be taking loans out, your credit score doesn't necessarily impact you because you don't have much credit early on. But what makes up your credit? I'll let you kind of take a peek up at the screen there and see what that is. And then some common questions that we field as financial advisors. Where can I check my credit score? There's a variety of options now. There's even some credit card companies, if you have one, that you can check your score there. I think many of the parents in the room may have been familiar with some recent credit breaches that happened that made some news, which was unfortunate, but you certainly have options as far as checking your credit score and being aware of your credit. If you're looking for a credit card, my advice for you as a young adult is, like everything in life, do it in moderation, make sure it fits with your budget. We're going to talk about your budget in a minute. When I first got my first credit card, it was a cashback card, and I used it just for gas and groceries, and it helped build my credit a little bit. And it was a starter for me. That worked for me. All right, not everyone's situation is the same, but it was a good place to start. All right, so your budget. This is, in my opinion, the most important thing for someone who's considering just financial literacy from a young adult standpoint. Understanding where your money's coming from and what you're spending your money on. And asking yourself the question, what is the money for? Should always be something that you're asking yourself as a young adult. So I put up the definition of the budget, not for because none of you know what it is, but because I kind of wanted to drive home the point a little bit. So along with other things in life, your budget is all about intention. And if you follow up your intention with action, you're going to take ownership of your budget. So what are some useful tools? This was something that I never was explained. How do you do a budget? What does that look like? So my wife and I, we do it the old school way. We use spreadsheets. But I realized that even though I might be a millennial, and I don't know if the students in the room are considered millennials or not, we do a lot on our mobile devices nowadays. In fact, I see many of you holding them right now, which I did. But they're also incredibly useful sources for you. So these are 3 useful budgeting apps that I like. My preference is to Mint, the 3rd one that's on there. I think it's incredibly resourceful, it's intuitive, it's robust, and you're able to use it for day-to-day things, monthly things, weekly things. You can build your budget out in a way that makes sense for you. Or you can use spreadsheets. If you don't know what those are, I'll be in the resource center. So the importance of saving. This is a conversation I have with quite a bit of my friends outside of my professional life, but certainly a lot as an advisor speaking to people who are under the age of 35 in particular. All right, so understanding that everyone starts somewhere, it can be related to everything, but certainly when it comes to saving. So again, asking yourself the important question, what is the money for? If you can assign some ownership to it, you're going to be able to really grasp and own your financial situation in life. Setting a savings goal as you're doing your budget should allow you to understand, what do I need to spend on day-to-day things, monthly things, yearly things? And if I have some left over, can I begin to save? And what that is, as far as it relates to your budget, is yours. All right, so starting somewhere is important. Yes, you can save while you're paying off your student loans. Yes, you can save while you have a mortgage. Yes, you can save while you are paying off that car that you always wanted. There are options, and those are all things that we have constant conversation with on a regular basis. And I'm happy to answer any of your specific questions. So your platforms for saving. So these are just some basic ones. I think a lot of these should not be too unfamiliar words to maybe the parents that are here in the room. But for many of you students in the room, you might be familiar with the first line, like a savings account at a bank. But you have other options as you become an adult and you earn money as to where you can go to put your savings, and you become employed as well. So understanding those things so that you're educated and you can make informed decisions are very, very important. So common questions that we get kind of just in general, can I save while I'm paying off debt? The answer is yes, but there's also, strategy and everyone's different. What are pros and cons of owning versus renting? We're seeing right now a huge renting boom that's kind of taken off in our economy. What are the pros of that? What are the cons of that? The ownership of a home. How much should I be saving? That's probably the most common question as you become a young adult and you're kind of navigating your employment, your college situation, your family, whatever it might be as a younger adult. How much should I be saving to do what I want to do later in life? And again, that differs from person to person, and hopefully that kind of gives you some ownership of your financial prowess this evening. That is essentially all that I have for you here this evening. I wanted to leave you with this slide. I don't know how well it shows up, but it's a representation of saving from an early age, and it takes into account, it starts at age 25, starts at $0, and it talks about people at different stages in their life. So I'll leave you with this. So Susan starts at age 25 and invests for 10 years until she's 35, and she invests $5,000 per year. She is this middle line right here. All right, so she invests a total of $50,000. Or excuse me, she is, I get my colors mixed up here. She starts at 25 and goes to 35. Then there's Bill. He invests $5,000 every year from age 35 to 65, a total of $150,000. But then there's Chris. Chris starts saving early, and he continues for his whole life. He saves $5,000 annually from 25 to 65. You can see his number is much higher when he decides to retire at age 65. So essentially what this is it's starting habits of saving early, making it an intention of yours to do it throughout your life, and allowing you to hopefully have some financial backbone as you get older in life and hopefully look to retire. Because no one wants to work until they're 90. So that's what I'll leave you with. I appreciate your time this evening. Thank you to Angela and Blake as well. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Another round of applause for our financial prowess presentation. Thank you very much. So that's the end of this breakout session. The next breakout session will begin at 10 after 7. You have some time at this point to browse the tables in the main commons. The next breakout session in the Sabre Center auditorium will be the College and Career Readiness panel. That is a panel of folks from the community in businesses and industry near us who can help you understand what they see in their employees, what they're looking for, and the skills that we want our students to have. So thank you very much.